Good morning, dear friends in Christ. Welcome to Yes Catholic Hangout. Today, the feast of presentation of the Lord. Our theme today is accept the offerings of the poor. To accept means to receive as suitable with responsibility. And what do we mean by the offering of the poor? We mean those things that you cannot do for yourself. Those little things that you cannot do for yourself. In the Leviticus tradition, you will understand this better. Because when you read Leviticus chapter 12 from verse 1 to 4, you understand that the gifts and the offering that the parents of Jesus Christ presented today fell within the category of the offerings of the poor. And the Simeon accepted it without rejecting it. How many men of God today, they only accept the offerings of the rich without accepting the lot of the poor. Even when they accept them, they don't see it as suitable. They don't feel they have the responsibility to utilize those things in a normal way, in a way that will benefit even the poor. There are 5 ways to accept the offerings of the poor. Number 1 is purify your mind and redeem your hearts. No wonder Prophet Malachi, in the first reading, Malachi chapter 3, from verse 1 to 4, he's telling us that the one coming is coming to purify us, is coming to refine us. Which means to accept those people, the poor in our society, our minds need to be purified and our hearts must be redeemed. To accept and embrace one another, we must have a Catholic heart. We must have a Catholic mind to embrace and understand one another and tolerate one another. The second thing we need to do to accept the offerings of the poor is open ancient doors of glory. What do we mean by ancient doors of glory? They are those doors that ensure the protection of human life, human rights. These are doors of glory. We need to open those doors once more. These doors, we have locked them for a long time now. The doors, the ancient door of respect for human life, we have locked it for a long time. The ancient door of respect for human life and human rights, we have locked it for a very long time. The ancient door of consideration of the poor in our society, we have locked it for a very long time. The ancient door of considering the victims in our society, we have locked that door for a long time. You can't imagine that somebody who was given something to give those who are internally displaced was stealing from the materials that were given to him to share to the people who were dislodged of their habitation. That is the kind of society we are living in. We steal from the poor. The rich steals from the poor. That is the ancient door of glory. That door that will lead us to truth. The door that will lead us to life. The door of truth. Because today we think that truth is relative. But then, even in politics, it's true that truth is relative somehow in the political realm. But then, I want us to read out something. In this book, Christ Our Joy, the theological vision of Pope Benedict XVI, by Monsignor Joseph Murphy. He says, far from protecting the freedom that democracy extols, the abandonment of truth will eventually lead to a dictatorship of tolerance or the manipulation of freedom itself. It means that each time we don't extol truth, each time we reject truth, that we either become dictators, running into dictatorship, or manipulating freedom. To survive and flourish, foundational values, which include respect for the dignity of all human life, the recognition and the safeguarding of human rights, particularly the right to religious freedom and the willingness to be guided by fundamental moral principles and objective truth. If we close the door for a very long time, the room begins to smell. We need to open the ancient door of dialogue. We need to open the ancient door of tolerance, the ancient door of unity and peace and justice and love. That is what the psalmist is telling us today in Psalm 24 from verse 7 to 10. The third thing we need to do in order to accept the offerings of the poor is partake in their suffering. I'm imagining those at the helm of affairs to reduce and come to partake in the sufferings of the poor. I'm imagining the leaders, religious and the secular leaders, to strip themselves of their royalty to mingle with the poor. No wonder the second reading today, letter to the Hebrews chapter 2 from verse 14 to 18, is telling us today that Jesus Christ did not segregate, did not reject us or detect us. Rather, he assumed our nature. He assumed our suffering in order to redeem us. He even allowed himself to be tempted in order to teach us how to deal with temptation. No wonder Pope Francis will tell the priests to smell like the sheep. The shepherd, a good shepherd, must smell like the sheep. Our leaders are not smelling like the poor masses of this country. They are smelling foreign. They need to smell local, not to understand and accept the offerings of the poor. The fourth thing we need to do is enlighten the Gentiles. We are in the culture where ignorance is being exploited. People exploit one another because they think they don't know. In fact, there is a common slang now young people use. They say, if you know, you know. Which means if you don't know, you don't know. And nobody's ready to help you to know. And even if they want to help you to know, they want you to know the wrong one. I want us to read out something from this book, wonderful piece I'm having here. In chapter 2, it says, the real problem of mankind, he maintains, is the darkening of truth. Indeed, lack of truth is the major disease of our age. This problem manifests itself at the personal, psychological level as an inability to be truthful, and within culture and society in general as a denial of the existence of an objective binding truth accessible to all. That this darkening of the truth affects us individually and also collectively. So there is need for enlightenment. So when I hear people downplaying, or when I see the budget of the country not extolling education, not giving education a very primary focus, then I weep for the next generation. It was a dream of Simeon in the Gospel Acclamation, Luke chapter 2:32, that the people, the Gentiles, will find the light of salvation. On a golf course, my golf pro told me, if you are given knowledge and ignorance, knowledge at all costs, buy it. Ignorance at low cost, don't buy it. The fifth way we can accept the office of the poor, apart from enlightening them, because some are not enlightened because of poverty. So bringing education, free education schemes to people that are handicapped, education-wise, means to enlighten them. So beyond enlightening those who are in darkness, the fifth way of accepting the office of the poor is desire the consolation of victims. Desire the consolation of victims. There is a book I have with me here, Peace Culture Towards a Renewed Philosophy and Theology of Peace by Reverend Father Dr. Anthony Chidozie Dipa. In this book, Father Anthony asks a question. He says, wars do end, yet ruthless suicide bombers and reprisal killings continue. Why? Because the ended war is like appendicitis that was treated with a painkiller. The ended war, we ended it with a painkiller without dissecting and bringing out the roots of the war. And here we are today, trying to repeat history instead of to learn from history. This book is all about talking about peace, peace culture, how we can embrace peace. It's very foundational. You can find the book in Amazon. Luckily enough, this morning also I found on the heading of Press newspaper, rejecting Biafra technology was Nigeria's big mistake. The Vice President says, oh, this is a wonderful one. To acknowledge, instead of building on the war, we need to build from the war. And this is a move to build out something, to make us something from the war, instead of keep reminding ourselves, refreshing the wounds, and which is not healthy for us. Dear friends in Christ, we pray that Almighty God may preserve us in His grace to be able to accept the offerings of the poor in our society for a better society, in order to hand on to the next generation and desire, like Simeon desired the liberation of Israel,